Welcome back to the Wolverine podcast. We have a whole heck of a lot to talk about tonight. I'm John Borton. You know all about Tom Crawford. He's of press pass fame with Jack Ebling and assorted other characters. Check your local listings for that. Wonderful sports talk show. I enjoy it frequently myself. And of course, Tom has his Crawford Podcasting Network, and you can catch him talking about all assorted things. There's from athletics to you name it. He'll give you a taste of Lansing and get you hungry for something. So, Tom,
Exactly.
good to see you again. Welcome back.
It's great to be here. You know, I had a message conversation. A friend of mine who is a psychologist, okay, and said that she appreciates my passion for, she's not a Michigan person, but passion for the Wolverines and everything, Mr. Positive and all that stuff. And she said when you have an emotional tie with a school like I do, to my level that I do, it takes about 48 hours to get over the pain of disappointment of a big event surrounding that passion. And that big event, obviously, was the Fiesta Bowl. And so we're sitting here at Tuesday, 5:30. So we've gone a couple days now, actually 3 days. So I'm relatively healed. It still lingers, and I'm still on media blackout. Whenever highlights of the Fiesta Bowl comes up, I switch it over to some other station.
So let me just ask you, and we all saw it play out. We saw the two pick sixes. I mean, you've had J.J. McCarthy throw, 3 interceptions all year, and then 2, and they go to the other end zone. He threw as many that went to the wrong end zone as to the right one as far as touchdown passes. You saw the calls, and then the fumble at the goal line, a freshman tight end turned quarterback on one call at the goal line, and everybody kind of threw up their hands at that. And even Jim Harbaugh said if he had that one to call back, he would call it later differently. And yet you've got set all of that and the disappointment of a 6-point loss to TCU, who's pretty darn good, by the way. We'll talk about that as well. But set that against the fact that this team went 13-0, won the Big Ten championship, took Ohio State down in their own building, and again made it to the college football playoff. Absolutely, there's disappointment. There's, we will go over some of the things that could have gone different, and that will be done into the following decades by Michigan football fans. But how do you balance those two? You got this great season, terrific season, beyond what anybody expected, I would think, or most people. And then you have that kind of a thump into the brick wall at the end.
Well, I think you just balance it by, kind of framing it like you just framed it. I mean, there's two things to look at this season. I mean, I look at this season first and foremost as a second consecutive Big Ten championship and college football playoff bid for the Michigan Wolverines. And if you had asked me that a few years ago, I'd say you're on drugs. That ain't happening. Not under this Harbaugh regime. What we saw from 2017 to 2020 into that infamous COVID year. I mean, I didn't see it happening in 21 and 22, and I think he did a great job leading with some hires, and the culture switched, and Aiden Hutchinson was great last year, and they got great leadership this year, and so a lot of super things happened, and we saw a lot of great football. I was concerned early on the season, and I voiced that about having a week non-conference schedule, not just because it doesn't give you any. I mean, you have to pitch a perfect game because it lessens your equity because you're playing soft teams. But I thought by playing at least one tough team, and then you can be exposed to vulnerabilities on your defense, for example, or offensively as well. And they really didn't have that test. They had Ohio State and Penn State were legitimate teams, but let's be real. I mean, that's the downside of not finding out what you're made of, if you will. And what's happened now, John, in a couple times. Okay, I'll go back to '06. Michigan's defense looked, God Almighty, that defense is the best defense in the world. It might be the best defense in Michigan football history. They go down to Columbus, and we saw what happened. They got carved up. I know that's a long time ago, but it's an example of when you get caught up in this whole mystique that this defense is that good. Look what happened last year. Go down to Georgia. That defense was so good. Maybe not as good as this defense was expected. And look what happened. Georgia manhandled them. And then the same thing. I mean, 275 yards rushing. I can't wrap my head around that one, John, against TCU. And so, that's the negative. That's the downside of this 2022 campaign is they got exposed. And also they got exposed to their vulnerabilities of the red zone, JJ McCarthy ball security, slash turnovers, whatever. The 2 pick sixes. I've never heard of a team winning with 2 pick sixes and the victim of thereof. I mean, that would have been huge. But I mean, it seems like everything that we worry about with Michigan, including their defense being exposed to a different kind of speed level at a different part of the country, look what happened, and it happened.
Okay, well, usually we are very much on the same page in many respects. I think we diverge a little bit here, and that could make it interesting. I just want to, I thought you would, when you were bringing up the non-conference season, you would say, well, in the end, it really didn't matter.
No, it does matter. And I just it's going to matter next year too. And you got the same cream puffs coming out. Same thing.
But here's my take. It honestly didn't matter in that Michigan still went undefeated in the regular season, still was good enough to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State, played Penn State, played Illinois, had several tough tests along the way. And in the end, it didn't hurt them with the committee, the playoff committee. Oh, yes, we're going to, we're keeping an eye. They didn't do as much, so we're not putting them number one. Michigan ended up as high as they were going to get, I believe.
They would have been there anyway, John. I mean, they could have lost. They could have lost to a credible opponent in non-conference play and still would have gotten into CFP. And they would have gotten a little bit more knowledge of what they're all about, in my opinion, instead of this fool's gold. Now, next year, you got East Carolina, you got UNLV, you got Bowling Green, and then you got Rutgers. Okay, so we're going to go waltzing through the park here on a sunny day and not knowing on an 85-degree, not knowing what you got. But then they go to Nebraska and Minnesota, maybe they'll learn a little bit more. But this is what really bothers me. And this is why the Big Ten gets butchered because of what happens in postseason play. They're not ready to play. I mean, look what happened to, Purdue. That was
Ohio State comes within a hair of knocking off Georgia. Yeah, Penn State wins the Rose Bowl. I don't think that
they won the Rose Bowl. Thankfully Utah's quarterback went out, and that probably made the difference. Listen, the Big Ten did well, okay, but I'm still saying with Michigan, I don't understand playing these kind of schedules is any good. It's cheating the fans. That's BS. You're paying all that freaking money down there. You're sweltering in the stands, and you're watching them play UNLV. Yeah, that's a lot. You're going to get a lot of knowledge about your team out of that.
So if Tom Crawford had the opportunity, was the world wizard commissioner of football, and could swap out whoever Michigan plays in the opener next year, nobody state, for, let's say, TCU or a team as good as that.
Give me one. Give me one. Give me one Power 5 in the non-conference. And how about on the road? How about on the road?
All right, on the road. Say they play USC on the road in the opener.
Home and home.
This is pre-USC, and they lose that game.
Not necessarily saying the opener, but in those first three.
And they lose that game. And then they go to Columbus, and they get edged out in that game. You ask Alabama how likely you are to get into the playoff at 2 losses, even though you are Alabama. Alabama has made a lot of hay playing nobody in the non-conference, but playing in a very good conference and going on to national
And
championships.
Alabama played. You gain. I mean, you get so much more respect. All Michigan got was blitzed all fall long about their cream puff schedule. That's all that happened. You know what I mean? And then
in the end, what difference did that make?
well, I mean, it can make a difference next year because you have to pitch a perfect game. But just play one. I, Iowa State just don't play five group of five or three group of fives at home. I mean that's a clown show. That's ridiculous. But maybe it's Ward Manuel's fault. I don't know whose fault it is. Okay, Harbaugh says talk to Ward Manuel. Okay, what Ward Manuel tell you? Well, because they UCLA canceled on us. We have to have so many home games. Blah, we have to make so much money. Blah blah blah. It's the same thing. I'm having a hard time with this administration anyway on the Harbaugh Manual thing, as it does with the coaching, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Absolutely. Well, okay, I'll just say point taken. But at the same time, in a world where you're about to bring USC and UCLA into the Big Ten, and there will be pressure for the Michigans and the Ohio States to play the USCs and the UCLAs. That's right. But at that point, you better not be putting yourselves in position to be losing non-conference games in this world.
You got to pick teams you can beat. That's what your criteria. That's athletic director John Borton. We got to have 3 teams we can beat.
You can challenge yourself, and especially it's going to be different as well. Let's just put it out there because you're going to have more teams in the playoffs.
You got 12 teams in, so thank God that's coming around the corner,
right?
Because then you got a mulligan here and there. You really do, and that's the way it should be. So it's actually going to. It's like an NCAA tournament. When you see when in basketball you get critiqued by the strength of schedule. Now I mean TCU had of the 4 teams in the playoff, TCU had the greatest strength of schedule of the 4 teams. Okay, and Michigan was the weakest, and they lost to freaking TCU, and they gave up a ton of yards, and I don't know, it just seems like there's this exposure to Michigan when it comes to Titanic games, and there's this exposure in the postseason. Jim Harbaugh has lost 6 freaking bowl games. I've been losing, as a fan and alumnus. Bowl losses are a part of my life. All they do is lose bowl games, and I go to the Pinstripe Bowl and win a bowl game, and I'd be happy. I'm just tired of losing the last game of the year every freaking year.
I understand, and I've been there with you for most of the bowl games. Certainly, my carpet at home had a hole pounded in it from New Year's Day in the early days with Bo. Although I'll say this, most of those were straight up road games. I mean, USC in the Rose Bowl. Okay, you're playing on the road. I'll be really happy to see USC come to Ann Arbor and play in the snow some.
Well, hopefully, and that would be if you don't get a first round bye and you're in your 5 or 6, 7 seed or 8, you're going to get a home game in December. That's great, and so we got one more year of this stuff, and but I don't let me get totally emotionally off track here. This was a great season for Michigan. I will say that. It's just disappointing that it seems to unravel at the end.
Yeah.
And embarrassingly unravel.
There's no question about that, which leads us to, okay, why did it unravel in this particular game? What are the elements? And you have mentioned as one you think is a possibility that they didn't play a higher level of competition in the non-conference. I don't subscribe to that because I think they had enough challenges after that, and certainly Ohio State being one of them, that they could have and should have handled some situations against TCU better. But in your mind, beyond that, what was it that broke down in this game?
Well, obviously there's a lot of things. I mean, this 3-3-5 thing offensively for Michigan that they couldn't get a running game going. I mean, opens up with a 53-yard run, and everybody's thinking, "Oh God, here we go! Look at this, man! This is just going to be like Ohio State." And then all of a sudden, we go back, go down the red zone, and what happens? They get too cute. The Philly special. I don't understand play calling. And it's funny. I got to ask you real quick before I go into that evaluation. So Jim Harbaugh said if I had that back, I would have done it. So he's telling you, John. He's telling us that he's calling the plays. Is that correct? Is that your assumption, or is he?
No, and I don't necessarily. As I heard Jim Harbaugh say it and how he phrased it, he said that's on me, but that does not mean he made that play call. I think what he was doing there was saying, if I had that to do over again, I'd have done something different. But that doesn't mean, it probably means, in my mind, it probably means I'd have vetoed the call that was made, because he certainly has veto power. But I just don't see that as a play that Jim Harbaugh called himself. At any rate, he was stepping up to take responsibility for it, and I think that's legit.
Yeah, but back to the other things. I think the Scooney injury, I think that really hurt Michigan quite a bit. I mean, Michigan was 3 of 13, I believe, on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down, and they've been so good on fourth down. I mean, it's like all this stuff that was working is not working.
All of it, yeah,
all of it. They punt it. They had special team play went bad on one. The third and set. Michigan comes back. They score 16 points or 15 points in like a blur or whatever. What did they score? They got it down to 3 points. Okay,
mm-hmm.
and they had a 3rd and 7, and they some type of a blitz situation, and the Johnston broke that one out. What was that? I'm trying to think of who. It wasn't Colston that missed, or who was that missed? It wasn't Junior Colston that missed that tackle. Was it Turner? I'm trying to think.
DJ Turner on the 76-yard touchdown. Yes.
Yeah. That was killer. That was a killer, devastating miss. And so you get. Bo Schembechler used to always say, a game is won and lost, 20 different times in the course of the game. Some people have that number fewer. Some people have it more. But this game, this bizarro game, was lost on so many times. And then, let's be real. They got jobbed on the Roman Wilson. That was a touchdown. And then I thought Donovan, if they're going to carry the ball, I thought Donovan would be the ball carrier. Didn't go that way, and Mullins fumbled it, and good Lord, that was killer. That's a 14-7 game, and then it's still 14-0, and they didn't even pin him down there. I thought Michigan. I thought there were some missed tackles. I thought Rod Moore and Sainristil were really good. There was a lot of great players play in this game, including Ronnie Bell. But and I thought JJ in the second half was unbelievably good, but those pick sixes are just damn.
Absolutely good. And as you referenced the 76-yard touchdown pass to Quentin Johnston, and you go right back to a staple of Michigan football. You cannot give up the big play.
Give up the big play, right?
I was thinking that Michigan's defense late in that game started to resemble too much Ohio State's defense late in the Michigan game.
Yep.
A desperate gambling. Okay, we've got to stop this at all costs, and we're gonna, send somebody. And that kid, that quarterback, TCU's quarterback. He was just very elusive and very good, and delivers the football. And then you miss one tackle, and it's all over. I agree. He got the upper hand in the quarterbacking. They both had 2 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, but the difference was J.J. McCarthy's interceptions went all the way the other way. It was just situations where instant flip and they score. Michigan
Well,
outgained TCU in this game. Here's
yeah.
the other. You rightly mentioned the Roman Wilson play that everybody thought was a touchdown, and people talked about the targeting at the end. The reason I will not talk about much about officiating in this game is because when you have that many opportunities, you throw two pick sixes, you run the tight end around, turn into a quarterback, and throw it to your quarterback on 4th and 2 when you've been smash mouth all season. I'm sorry. After the Wilson play, you could have run 4 straight quarterback sneaks if you needed to get that ball in the end
Yeah,
zone.
exactly.
JJ
Exactly.
McCarthy in there. You didn't do it. You fumbled. Michigan had so many opportunities in that game that I just can't, officials.
No,
Yeah,
and be honest with you. I mean, Michigan. I mean, there were some bad calls that went the other way. There was a pass that Michigan completed. I can't remember who it was too, and it was incomplete. But Michigan went and snapped the ball, and then they got an interference call. They jumped. They got 30 yards just like that without earning a yard. I mean,
yeah,
and those were bad. Now, so those were. And I'm not saying it was even Steven. And Michigan's jobs, if you will, were a little bit more devastating and glaring when you got a touchdown taken away from you, and then the targeting thing would have given Michigan a 2 to 3 more plays at midfield. Who knows? That would have been interesting to see how that played out. But back to the smash mouth JJ's talking about. We're going to bring Big Ten physicality, and I don't like that kind of talk. But that's just me. Okay, I'm not a player. Okay, but if I'm just going to role play here. If I was the coach, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want JJ McCarthy getting up and walking out of the press conference. Look, you've been a
yeah,
great guest at the press conference. You did all the attribution to your teammates. You're a team guy. You're eloquent. You're engaging. For every one of those 12 wins that when you were the starting quarterback. But when you lose, you stand up and you take it with poise. You don't make your declaration and get up and walk out. What are you, Chris Webber? And the 92 or 90 92 and 93 Final Four. You don't do that. I would be irritated if I was a coach. We don't do that the Michigan way, is what my opinion. So there's a lot of what happened. What happens is the game, as one coach once said, the game eventually makes fools of us all, fans and players. I mean, there was just a lot of bad that came out of this game that I'm still processing it that I did not envision.
I agree. I agree, and that leads right to the next question, which is, okay, you had the bad, you had you literally dropped the ball in your most important game of the year, chance to go to the national championship. Where does this take Michigan in terms of the next step going forward? If all else stays the same, and we're about to talk about some things that could change, but if all else stays the same, where does this thing go for Michigan football? Uh, how can they build on what happened, both good and bad, in 2022 with a team that is bringing back an awful lot to really at least try to match the conference championship and continue against Ohio State and find a way to take it the next step in the playoff?
Well, that's a complicated question because, well, I know, and we'll get into the ifs. I mean, we don't. We're almost doing this hypothetically because we don't know the status of the
No doubt.
Michigan head coach. But we do. I mean, Michigan's still losing a lot of players. Two or three off that offensive line. I mean, they're losing Ronnie Bell. I mean, there's. I mean, I don't have a list in front of me, but I mean, there's some critical players, and including Scooney, who's been, that was just so devastating. He got hurt. Um, and then Blake Corum. I mean, if they lost him, and who knows if he's coming back. But so that they have a lot of patching to do. And then when you do this portal thing that They did successfully last year, and now they're going to do it again. They got the Stanford lineman coming in. There's a lot of dynamics that got to fit to make that. There's no guarantee. I mean, I keep saying college football is like a blank canvas between the transfer portal. The transfer portal alone makes it ambiguous. So how do you know who's going to be any good next year? Because you don't know how these new guys are going to fit in culturally, chemistry wise, how effectively they're going to play, learn the system. And it was worked out good this year with some great additions, but how do we know how that's going to play next year? So it's difficult to say, but I think JJ McCarthy is there's 4 quarterbacks in the CFP, and he's the only one coming back. And I was just critical of some of his, the press stuff, and obviously we're frustrated and some of the mistakes he made. But I think he's going to have I think he's a great young man. I think he's going to go down as the greatest quarterback in Michigan history before he's done. I will make that statement. I think he's going to be in the Heisman ceremony next year, or at least as a participant, because he's such a freaking competitor. So that's all good stuff right there.
That is all good stuff. And I would say you mentioned those offensive linemen that are coming in via what is now college football free agency. Michigan's very first move, you take those 3 guys, you set them in a room with Olu Oluwatimi and say, okay, Olu, you tell them what they need to do to be a tremendous success here, from how hard you work to attitude to mixing in with teammates to keeping your mouth shut until you're asked to speak. Even Olu was so quiet and just went about his business that finally the coaches said, hey, you've proven enough to these guys, speak up, you can take leadership. And he was just fantastic.
So that's going to be a big loss.
Create that culture that the New England Patriots had going in the Brady years, where you may have had issues somewhere else, or you may be the new guy. You come in and you fit in here, because this is a team that is winning at a very high level now. And if you want to be part of this, you come in and you fit in.
I agree, but when you got Olu leaving, I mean, he's gone. McKeegan and Zenter. I don't know about Zenter. I guess he could come back. Jamon Green, DJ Turner, Upshaw, Mike Morris. I mean, there's a lot of, Barnhart is gone, right? But Moody and Robbins, my God, you got a kicker who just kicked the field goal 59 yards. A lot to answer your question. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of holes to be filled. So I'm excited about next year, but I'm guarded beyond the uncertainty of the leadership in terms of the coaching.
Okay, and I'm willing to, because of what I saw this year, and because of the young guys that I know they're bringing along, if all else stays the same, coaching staff wise, or mostly the same, I feel good enough about what they've got coming back with a second year of starting by JJ McCarthy that I'll tell you right now, they're going to go into Michigan, Ohio State at Michigan Stadium once again with a chance to win or earn the spot in Indianapolis, and that means you're going to the playoff again.
For that will be the last one, right? Because after next year, besides the 12-team playoff, you have one division. And,
right.
and then that's when, scheduling really is going to be an issue, because who are you going to be playing in your conference slate is going to dictate who's going to get, one of those 1 or 2 slots up there. So there's a lot of moving parts moving forward, and
no doubt.
I'm super excited about next year.
And I think for good reason. Okay. Elephant in the room here. This is something that I don't even like talking about.
I know you don't.
Because for a couple of reasons. One, we do not know if Michigan's going to come through and sign Jim Harbaugh to a expanded long-term contract. this week and say, you are our guy. We needed you, and we realize that, and we want you to feel like you are completely respected and rewarded for these last couple of years and all that you put into this thing over your tenure. And the other thing is, I mean, this is being talked about in other places 24/7. Does Jim Harbaugh stay? Does Jim Harbaugh go? What is behind the, why don't we just put this to rest? And but it is being talked about, and it is being wondered about, and there are legitimate reports out there that at least the interest from the NFL side is there. And I would say that you know last year showed that Jim Harbaugh has at least more than a passing interest in the NFL. Maybe he's gotten past that, maybe he hasn't, but go ahead. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, because he tasted that Super Bowl thing. His the big brother beat him out, but so he's got that still. He wants to conquer. And I think Chris Ballas, your colleague, wrote that, he probably wants to win the Super Bowl as much as he wants to win the national championship. Okay. So that means he's got that thirst for the NFL. It's like, we were talking about before the podcast. We want to get into this thing because about Harbaugh, because my God, by something might change by the end of the 24-hour cycle moving up or whatever. You know what? This thing didn't get a signing day. This guy was in Minneapolis interviewing for the Vikings job. So I mean, who knows when this thing is going to get resolved? And that's why I get frustrated with the Jim Harbaugh. That whole process, word manual, that whole tandem of getting in a room and getting this thing done. Okay. The season's over with. And and you've had time to think about this. If your ward manual going into the season, if this was going to come up, you've had a few weeks where there's been no activity. Okay. Move on this thing. Don't let Bruce Feldman from The Athletic, who is a pretty doggone reliable source in college football, say, if he's offered an NFL job, he will take it. I mean, that's a credibility. I mean, it's probably true. He didn't really get offered a job last year, and he was flirting with it. I mean, quit the flirtation. I mean, do you want to be the Michigan football coach or not? You called Ward Manuel on the phone last year and said, I'm committed to Michigan. Okay, 12 months later, here we go again. Are you going to do the tango? You said, I don't know, you said a week ago, I don't know when it was ago, that you're going to stay at Michigan. We'll kind of reiterate that post-season, post-CFP, post all the rumors this week. Make one more statement. Look, I'm not going to make any more statements. I'm staying here at Michigan. But you will say, and very eloquently, which is true, there goes his leverage, right? As far as the salary, not just for him, but his coaches. So I'm going to pull that back. I'm going to push that back to you, and you throw that part of the equation, John, of why it's good for him to delay.
If you have an agent out there making your case to whomever, and you've got, are you going to discourage NFL interest when you're trying to get squared away? All right. No, you're not. You're going to say, hey, these guys are interested. Let's talk to these guys. These guys are interested. In the meantime, sure. If Michigan wants to come up and really make up for 2020, I think there are some lingering feelings of disrespected sort of situation from what Jim Harbaugh taking the pay cut, and I understand that things were not in his favor then. He knows they are now. All those same people that were throwing up their hands and saying, if he wants to go, let him go. Now are saying, you can't lose this guy. You've got to give him $10 million a year. You got to make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten and all that. Okay, if you're Jim Harbaugh, and if you do still want to stay at Michigan, you still want to feel that you are highly respected and highly desired in the place that you're going to work. And You're right. That NFL thing is still out there. If he'd have beaten his brother in the Super Bowl, maybe we wouldn't even be worrying about that. But
Well, John. So to your point, then, okay. So I'm equally blaming. I have as much blame for Ward Manuel. I mean, get this thing done, okay? So whoever the decision maker is, President. Oh no, you got a new president there who's all bullish on Michigan football and Michigan athletics. I mean, well, why wouldn't Michigan have Michigan is an elite program. Michigan is the winningest football program in college football. They should be in the top 3 of salaries. That should be automatic. You have Michigan State paying their coach out of here, Mel Tucker, who couldn't even earn a bid to a freaking bowl game. He's earning more than your guy. What the hell's that about?
Well, that contract now is a national joke. And
well, I don't care if it's a joke. Michigan needs to have at least the top 3 highest paid coach, okay, in my opinion. And the guy's won back-to-back, Big Ten titles. You righted the ship, pay him, you offer him what you're going to offer him. Don't wait, don't just go waffle around, see if he's interested in the NFL. Get it done right now. You got the money. My God, my fellow Michigan alumni, I got friends who make a lot of money. There's a lot of money in this alumni base. Stephen Ross is down there. Come on. You don't have to have Matt Ishbia. Michigan State can do it. Michigan's got a ton more guys like that. Get it done now. And don't just go doing this 4-month tango up to signing day. That's
a couple of points here. We have talked about the passion with which Santa Ono approaches his job as president of the University of Michigan. The fact that athletics and Michigan football is very much a part of that passion. It's not just doing this in the hospital or doing this in the math department. He wants to be the best in everything. And all of a sudden, he's in a position where he could have some say-so in this. Look, guys, he said to somebody about something. He wasn't clear about it, but he didn't want to be specific. But he said there was somebody that was talking about a high bar in this area. He says, I want to be the guy that says, don't bring me excuses, bring me solutions. And if he said to the right people, look, don't bring me excuses about whether or not we have Jim Harbaugh coaching when football kicks off next fall, bring me the solution that will make it so. I think that could make it so. And, obviously the fans are tired of this.
Absolutely.
This doubt.
Alabama with Nick Saban, they don't have the. Come on. What, man? Does Alabama go through this every year with Nick Saban? No. Is Kirby Smart? And Kirby Smart played at Georgia? Okay. Jim Harbaugh played at Michigan. Okay. Kirby Smart. You think Kirby Smart's going anywhere? No. He's going to be at Georgia, and he is the next Nick Saban. You heard it here from me and many others. He is going to be the next Nick Saban, and Georgia is committed to him. And I know someone posted that about Harbaugh. It was a high. It was getting a lot of conversation. I just saw it on the thread from our, and we're getting a lot of input here on this podcast, which is great. But
yes, thank you for the contribution.
What I saw, he was the 6th. What is he ranked in the 6th highest? Whatever. And whatever that is, and I don't know these packages, but pay him what he needs to be, what he wants, and get that ink and get this NFL tango crap down. Now, Adam, one of your posters right here, interesting comment, and I thought about it at the same time when Jim Harbaugh said Sharon Moore is ready to coach. Okay, and so I think Sharon Moore should be the next. If Harbaugh leaves, it's Sharon Moore, in my opinion. It's that's a no-brainer to me. That on my part, that's a good one, and maybe Jed Fish he did a great job at Arizona, blah blah blah. No, Sharon Moore is your next head coach, in my opinion.
Well, I that would be a big step up. He has obviously not been a head coach. I'm not opposed to it, But I'll tell you what, if that happened, uh, you would want extreme steps taken to make certain that you had kept the vast majority of this staff together. If Jim
Yeah.
Harbaugh left and took your strength and conditioning coach with you and took several, takes your defensive coordinator and takes
You think
Matt
those are the
White.
only defense? Do you think those are the only defensive coordinators in America, though, John? I mean, they're not
No,
the only one.
absolutely not. But
As
if you
good as
kept
Jesse
this
Minter
staff
was,
along with the head coach, then I think this. I'll say this. I'll put it this way, and we see that Jim Harbaugh here is the 12th in FBS as far as
yeah. Well, there you go, 12.
So, but I believe this staff that is in place at present is Michigan's best assistant coaching staff since the early 90s.
I agree.
Seeing the likes
totally.
of Les Miles and
Yes.
Cam Cameron and
Absolutely.
and
Moeller
Rose
and
County.
yes, Lloyd Carr, all those Bo guys, absolutely.
So, are there other guys that you could bring? Sure, but boy, you've got it going right now. The more you can do to keep it going, do it.
Listen, I'd rather have Harbaugh stay,
Mhm.
okay? But I want him to commit to stay and not and quit, and snuff this stuff out a little bit more vehemently than he's doing. And I'm just what I'm doing right now is I'm foreshadowing in my mind we're going to be doing this dance for the next 4 weeks, just like we did last year. And you're not going to hear anything out of administration. You're not going to hear. All you're going to do is hear rumors, and the message board on the Wolverine.com is going to go crazy, and all the rivals. I mean, you got juniors coming in right now. The junior days are going to come up these next on campus visits. Okay, 2024 guys. So you want your guy. You want everybody twisted in the wind about Jim Harbaugh. No, get it done now. January is a big recruiting month for 24. And that's what I'm just, what I'm doing is being a worry wart that last year is going to repeat. But if you're going to leave, if Sharon Moore stays, I think a lot of guys will stay with him. I'll make that statement.
Yeah, well, that would I would say the more guys he kept in place, the more it would go towards convincing people that in fact this ball is going to just keep rolling. But I would say people having seen the last 2 years, they were at one place after those last two games that they'd played at against Ohio State prior to the break, and then the way 2020 played out. There were plenty of people that were really not all that shook up if there was a change, if Jim Harbaugh decided to leave. The way that they have delivered, the way that he has met the competitive challenge and come through these last 2 years, it's a very different story. You really, I run into very few people other than those that are just fed up with the second year in a row. Well, we don't know for sure, and I look at it is okay. Is it John Beeline 2.0? When John Beeline expressed,
Yeah.
I went
Well,
after the NBA and didn't get it. I just thought it was a matter of time, and
but
it was.
that was a statement for John Beeline. John Beeline was burned out on the status of college basketball. Okay.
Yep.
And I know
Yep.
that for a fact. Okay?
And you've got an element or two of that, I think, with Jim Harbaugh
Yeah.
being privately frustrated with some certain things as in the modern college game and how Michigan attacks those things. So, I think that element is there. The differences are Jim Harbaugh did go to Michigan. His roots are so deep here. He played for Bo Schembechler. He's got Michigan in his blood, which is not to say that John Beeline didn't understand that as a transplanted head coach here and still care about Michigan. But I would say the roots certainly go deeper, longer, and that weighs in Michigan's favor. But the sooner that they get things squared away, the better off it will be, from current players that are trying to decide what they're going to do
Yeah.
to going forward with laying the foundation for another recruiting class to everything. The Michigan haters love this. You know,
Oh
they
yeah,
absolutely
absolutely.
love
They're absolutely they love it, and they're promoting it, and it's on Sports Talk Radio. But it's also Michigan lovers. Like, go onto the Wolverine.com message board and see what the topic track is about. It's like
Oh yeah.
37 different versions of Jim Harbaugh's status. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a preoccupation there, but I'm just hoping that it gets resolved quickly and we don't repeat what we did last year, where we
Yeah.
have a head coach on an interview visit on signing day, which was, I think, that was the most disgusting thing that you could have, in my opinion.
It is incumbent upon the powers that be at Michigan, if they don't want that to be the situation, that
Yeah,
they go out as soon as possible
yeah, get it
and
done.
assure that that is not going to be the case.
Yeah,
Tom Crawford, we did not get to basketball tonight because
okay,
we got on a football roll.
yes,
We will address this. Michigan now 2-0 in the Big Ten, and you
yeah,
never know. You don't know if it's going to be this undefeated Big Ten team or the team that loses to Central Michigan and then
yeah,
admits it didn't give great effort.
yeah, yeah.
So a whole lot to talk about there, but we will definitely do that a week down the road. Thanks for being with us, and man, we're gonna have some fun with all of this because, like every year, it seems like it just never stops. There's always a lot to talk about with Michigan athletics.
The passion for the Michigan football and basketball programs and all the other off the scale, and I'm just glad to be part of it here on the Wolverine.com, John. Thanks for having me.